Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV. We've got another laptop to take a look at that's got an OLED display, this one from Lenovo. This is the IdeaPad Slim 7 Carbon. It is a very lightweight machine with a 14-inch OLED display, and we're going to take a closer look at it in just a second. But I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, this is on loan from Lenovo. So when we're done with this, it goes back to them. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. No one is paying for this review, nor has anyone reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and see what this laptop is all about. Now, the price point on this is around $1,200. Our review loaner here is powered by a Ryzen 7 5800U processor. There are versions of this that have this Ryzen processor along with an NVIDIA MX450 GPU, but this one we're looking at today does not have that GPU, and I'll point out a few areas where you might get a little more graphical boost from that additional option if you go that route. There's also an Intel version available. This one has 16 gigabytes of RAM. It is not upgradable. It is soldered on, but the storage is upgradable. It has a 512 gigabyte SSD, at least on the loaner model that we have here. Now, it has a gorgeous 14-inch OLED display on board. It's running at a resolution of 2880 by 1800. And it can run it up to 90 hertz, so it looks nice and smooth. You've got deep black levels here thanks to that OLED. It also is rated for 100% of DCI P3, so it's been color calibrated for creative work. And if you want to turn the refresh rate down to save battery life, they have a shortcut here. You just hit Function R, and it will switch it into either a 60 hertz or 90 hertz mode here. So all in, really nice display. I also like that it's a 16 by 10 display, so you have extra height for doing web browsing and creative work. Now, for media watching, it supports Dolby Vision HDR if the app you're using supports that, and its maximum brightness is 400 nits. Very bright, very crisp, and really nice with that high refresh rate as well. Audio is also very nice on this. It supports Dolby Atmos. It has 4 speakers on board for positional audio. And again, the app you're using has to support Atmos, but it actually sounds pretty good for a thin and light laptop like this. Not terribly deep bass, but a good range of sound. I listened to some music on it, played a few movies on it as well. Really good sounding audio just out of the box here. And then, of course, you could plug in headphones or speakers to get better quality audio out of it. Now, Lenovo has labeled this the Carbon Edition because it is very lightweight. It's about 2.42 pounds or 1.01 kilograms as configured here, but it feels lighter than that, primarily because it's very well balanced. I was surprised that when I lift the display lid up here, it doesn't take the keyboard with it, despite how lightweight it is. Now, it's made out of carbon fiber on the top and magnesium aluminum on the bottom. It feels very rigid, but lightweight at the same time, and overall the build quality is quite nice on this one. Now, the keyboard on this one is your standard Lenovo keyboard. Nicely spaced keys, decent sized with good key travel. Very nice to type on, doesn't take long to get used to it, and it's also backlit. There's no fingerprint reader on this, but the webcam on board will do facial recognition, so you can get in with that versus a fingerprint. It's also got a nice big trackpad here that tracks quite nicely and on par with other Lenovo laptops that we have looked at. And you've got a bunch of stickers to peel off when you take it out of the box. There's not much for ports on this one. Unfortunately, there's no Thunderbolt here, but you do get 2 USB Type-C ports on the left-hand side. These are USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, so they support 10 gigabits per second each. They also do video output and power in, and you can plug in the included power supply to either one of these 2 ports. You also have a headphone microphone combo jack here. On the other side, you have another USB-C port, but this one is a Gen 1 port. It only runs at 5 gigabits per second, and it does not support video output, nor does it support power in. So you've got to plug power in on the other side. We have not seen, at least on this channel, an AMD device with a Thunderbolt port just yet, but we should start seeing some with USB 4, but this one is still running on USB 3. There is a webcam here at the top. It is only a 720p webcam, though. We're starting to see 1080p webcams make their way out to laptops, but I think good enough for doing Zoom calls and that sort of thing. There is a switch here on the side to disable the camera. Unlike other Lenovo laptops that have a shutter mechanism, this one does not. but it does turn the camera physically off when you flick this switch. And any app that you load up that uses the camera will tell you it hasn't found a camera if that switch is disabled here on the side. Now, battery life always has a number of variables. You've got a few extra ones to consider on this laptop depending on your configuration. So if you have the OLED display, you're going to want to keep that display brightness down, and you're probably also going to want to switch it into the 60 Hertz mode, which is also going to help extend the battery life out a bit. So if you do that and stick to basic applications, I think you could probably get 8 to 10 hours, maybe a little bit more out of this. But if the display brightness is up high, if you've got it in that 90 Hertz mode and you're doing some more intensive applications like video and photo editors and that sort of thing, you will see less battery life. Also, if you have the version that has the GPU, that will also eat into battery life a bit as well. So there's a bunch of factors here to consider, and also have a look at the power and battery section here and switch it into the best power efficiency mode to squeeze a little bit more out of that battery. All right, let's take a look now and see how it performs. We'll begin with the basics here, some web browsing, and we are on my Wi-Fi 6 network here. And we'll just dial up the nasa.gov homepage and see how fast things operate. As you can see, everything springs to life very quickly here, as you would expect out of a modern laptop. Text and photos look spectacular on the display here, and all in, it feels like a decent browsing experience. We also looked at YouTube a little bit earlier, running a 1080p 60 video file. Had a couple of drop frames right when it started, but after that it smoothed out just fine, and it was able to playback media without any issues. And again, the display here really adds a lot, especially for platforms that support Dolby Vision HDR. And on the browserbench.org speedometer benchmark test running in Google Chrome, we got a score of 204.9. That puts this one right where I expected it to land insofar as its performance is concerned doing basic web browsing. Now, we also installed DaVinci Resolve on the laptop, and producer Jake here has a project with his cat that we're looking at here. This is a 4K 30 frames per second project. We did optimize the video, but it's running at full resolution. And you'll notice it does get a little laggy when it comes to transitions and other things insofar as real-time previews are concerned. So you might want to work with proxy files that are running at a slightly lower resolution. This is one area where adding that GPU option might let things run a little bit more smoothly. But still, the performance here is on par with what I expected. So let's take a look at some gaming now. This is Fortnite running at medium settings at the native resolution of the display, 2880 by 1800. We're seeing a range between 40 and 80 frames per second at these settings, depending on what you're doing in the game. But overall, very playable, and you can easily get to a point where this game can run at a solid 60 frames per second if you dial in the right combination of resolution and graphical settings. We also ran Red Dead Redemption 2. This one we ran at 1920 by 1200 at the lowest settings, and here we were in the 25 frames per second territory. Again, this is another one that you could probably tweak down to 720p to get a more playable frame rate, but overall, very playable here, and performance is on par with what we've seen on similar Ryzen processors. We also took a look at The Witcher 3, an older game, but still pretty demanding. This one we ran at low settings at 720p, and you can see we're in the 80 frames per second range here, running at that lower resolution. And because you've got the 90 Hertz display here, this game and others that you can get up to a higher frame rate will look quite nice and run quite smoothly on it. And on the 3D Mark TimeSpy gaming benchmark test, we got a score of 1,401. Again, this one is performing right where we expected it to perform versus other similarly equipped Ryzen laptops. We also ran the 3D Mark stress test, and there we got a passing grade of 98%. That score indicates that this machine will not throttle all that much when it's placed under heavy, consistent load. Now remember, we have the one without the GPU, so I don't know how the GPU one will perform with an additional heat-generating chip inside of it, but the cooling system, at least for this model as configured, is working quite effectively. And the fan noise on this is very quiet. When you're doing basic work, you'll probably never hear it. And even when you've got it under load, it really isn't all that loud. It does draw air in through the sides here on the bottom, and it exhausts out underneath the hinge here. But all in, it seems like it's got a decent cooling system on board. Now, normally at the end of these videos, we boot up Ubuntu to see how Linux runs on one of these devices. And we did try to boot up the latest version of Ubuntu. It did come up. However, the trackpad, the Wi-Fi, and the touch panel were not detected on the Linux side. So at the moment, I am not going to recommend this as a Linux device, but it is a very nice Windows laptop, really nicely built, performs great even without the GPU, and a beautiful OLED display here as well. And that is going to do it for our look at the IdeaPad 7 Slim Carbon Edition. And until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters Jim Tanis and Tom Albrecht, Hot Sauce and Video Games and Eric's Variety Channel, Brian Parker and Frank Goldman, Amda Brown and Matt Zagaya, and Chris Allegretta. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.